Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. You see it up on the TV, you know what we're talking about. We're talking WandaVision. However, we're not talking anything new yet. It's 10:30 on the East Coast, Thursday, February 11th, 3 a.m. It's less than 5 hours away when we do get some new content. And knowing that, I was like, this is it. This is my last chance to put up my thoughts about where we could be going, because it certainly feels like episode 6 is going to have some major implications and possibly some major answers. So if you got any theories on WandaVision, now is the time to get them out. And I'm rocking a Marvel shirt because it does feature Wanda and her brother Pietro, who's going to be very important to this conversation. But it also involves all of Marvel, because this show, I think, is about to have some major implications on the MCU. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. It is last chance to get out your theories before episode 6 drops in WandaVision. That's what the old C-Man is going to do. If you've been following me for the last, 4 weeks? We've watched 5 episodes, 4 weeks. Yeah, so the last 4 weeks. You've been riding with me. You know how obsessed I am with the show. How much I love it. How much I love that it makes me think like crazy. And I also hate that it makes me think like crazy. And the fact that it just continually finds really interesting ways to surprise, engage, and pull the audience in with each chapter that unfolds. And while we've covered just about everything there is to cover in our spoiler reviews, I want to take a little bit of time to just talk about what is going on with this show, and specifically what the appearance of Evan Peters' Pietro from the Fox universe means and where it could take us. So I got my old notebook out, I took some notes, and we're going to cover some important characters. The first thing that you have to establish, and something that, I as well as many people have theorized from day one, was that WandaVision was going to be tied to an emotional break of some kind for Wanda. And after finding out what Monica Rambeau was feeling inside of the Maximoff anomaly, as they've called it, or the Hex, as Darcy calls it. Of course, a nod to the Hex magic that, Scarlet Witch uses in the comics. But at the center of the story is Wanda, and with what, Monica tells us, at the center of what's going on with Wanda is some kind of emotional pain, trauma, and grief, right? She felt, pain, but then she felt like she was drowning, like she was just being engulfed by grief. And that is what Wanda is feeling, and that probably has some to do with, some of her memory being kind of funky. There are moments, certainly early in the show, where it didn't seem like Wanda was totally sure what was going on sometimes, or that she was in control. And as we've gone further into the show, we see she's got full control of what's going on inside of this anomaly, or at least so we think. So at the center of this, obviously, is Wanda. And when you look at what the traumatic things are that could be playing into something that maybe just spontaneously happened, you gotta look at what could spark something out of her control to just happen. Because she's already been dealing with the loss of her brother. She obviously had to come to some kind of terms in the moment to kill Vision. She didn't get a chance to process that because Thanos rewound it, ripped out the stone, and then snapped everybody away, one of which was Wanda. And then after she comes back, right, you figure, I don't know what's going on. I just reappear, and Vision's missing, everybody's missing, and by the time you get your bearings and probably have gathered up with, the other people of Wakanda who come back, like Black Panther, Doctor Strange is showing up like, hey guys, we gotta go save the day right now, and you're just kind of going into it. And that raw pain you see from Wanda when she almost kills Thanos single-handedly, which Monica points out, and then Jimmy Woo goes, well, Captain Marvel got kind of close too. And Monica did not look very happy when he said that. We mentioned in the spoiler review, there's something weird going on with Monica and Captain Marvel, whether that was things that Captain Marvel brought to the table that maybe led to Maria getting sick. Who knows? That is certainly something that I'm very interested in, and could lead to that massive cameo that Olsen and Bettany have been talking about with Captain Marvel. There was a moment where I was like, oh, she's going to call Captain Marvel, which she doesn't. She texts a, what do we call it? Like a astro scientist or something like that, which could be Ant-Man or Giant Man, who's right here. So it could be the Pims. But I did actually see something on Twitter where someone was like, it could be the little Skrull girl from the first Captain Marvel movies that was kind of buddy with Monica. Maybe they grew up together. Maybe they're both a part of SWORD, and maybe she is that scientist that she's hitting up. That would be really cool to see. And maybe that would be probably a small cameo. But I'm interested in that. But back to what's at hand, focus, because we get so much to talk about. Wanda, right, comes back, almost kills Thanos. Then Tony fixes everything, sacrifices himself. They give that funeral, and now Wanda's got to start processing stuff, right? You see the conversation that she has with Hawkeye. What happens after that? Well, my thought would be that she probably goes to Pepper and probably asks point blank, where's Vision's body? Because you would have to imagine that after everything happens in Infinity War, you got 5 years where all these heroes were just living, right? Tony, it would seem like Tony just gave up. Maybe he sold Stark Industries or left it to somebody so that him and Pepper could just go have a family in the woods. Like, he doesn't need money. He's got more money than God. So he may have very well sold, Stark Industries. Maybe he sold all that technology to Samuel Jackson. Maybe. And maybe Samuel Jackson was not who we saw get snapped away. Maybe that was Talos, because we obviously in Spider-Man Far From Home find out that Maria and Fury are Talos and his wife. Maybe Talos has been here longer than we thought, and he got snapped away. Maybe Fury didn't. Maybe Stark made a deal with him. Maybe Vision got given to Fury and SWORD. And then, after Maria dies, Hayward comes into the picture. That's how Hayward gets his hands on Vision. So if you're Scarlet Witch, you go to Nick Fury at the funeral and you go, where's Vision at? And Nick Fury tells you, oh, he's at SWORD headquarters. And you maybe, I don't know, have to do some investigating or something, and you find out, maybe you just went in and asked and was like, hey, can I get my man's body, please? Like, I want to mourn correctly. Like, I didn't get to bury my brother because he fell on a planet that blew up, or a piece of the planet that they had to blow up, a city. I want to at least bury Vision. And maybe she gets turned down by Hayward directly. And that leads to that bit that we see in the show. And maybe her breaking into SWORD and seeing Vision literally being dissected. I mean, if you think about it, if Stark gave SWORD technology, or at least gave, Fury Vision's body, maybe in that 5 years, after Maria dies, now Hayward has that body for 3. So for 3 years, Hayward has had Vision extracting information and things out of him, whatever he was doing. And when Wanda gets there and sees that, maybe that's the thing that breaks her. Maybe having to fight her way to get to him, and then finding out that he has been broken apart in pieces post his own death, maybe that's what sparks it. And before we go any deeper on that, like I said, Hayward having Vision's body for 3 years, minimum, is one of several people that are kind of just circling around Wanda and WandaVision. And the thing that's going on with Hayward, I think, because he's shady, right? Like, we all had a feeling that he wasn't good. Then Darcy and Jimmy acknowledge that he's a dick. And when Darcy even goes to say that he's a dick, they kind of cut away from it because, it's Marvel. Let's not say dick in family programming. And then instead you hear him saying terrorist. So it kind of almost sounds like Hayward is a terrorist. We're hinting that Hayward is bad. And when you see the way Wanda looks at him when she breaks out of the anomaly, and she's like, I have everything I need now, and nobody is taking that from me again. And she looks right at Hayward because Hayward took Vision from her. I think Hayward is going to be our into AIM. All that technology and artificial intelligence and nanobot technology and all of these things that are not sentient world observations, seems like maybe that could be A.I.M. Maybe that's what all them hexagons been about, hit all those kind of nods and tips to Hydra and A.I.M. And the fact that Hayward has this information for over a week, like 9 days. And then, in that briefing, he goes, I was only now given clearance to show you guys this bit of information. Who's he getting clearance from? He's the director of S.W.O.R.D., acting director. He shouldn't be reporting to anybody unless somebody outside of S.W.O.R.D. that he is reporting to is on the outskirts. So if you're going to get into like A.I.M. and more of the type of stuff that could roll into a more traditional Marvel storyline or plot line, maybe something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, although I think that's going to be its own thing, but that type of world, Hayward could be in there. And like I said, I'm just getting really bad vibes from him. What was he doing with that body for the amount of time that he had to have had the body? All of those things I don't trust with Hayward. Now, since we were talking about Vision, of course, is one of those other people that's circling around Wanda right now. And what's going on with him, right? How was he resurrected? How did Wanda bring him back? Could Wanda, in having that break, maybe spark something that sent off some sort of a trigger where someone like Agatha Harkness maybe felt a presence and could tell that like she needed help? Maybe after the initial emotional impact, maybe she, before the anomaly happens, maybe she seeks out someone that can help bring him back. Maybe whoever is pulling the strings behind the scenes here in WandaVision was involved from the get-go in trying to resurrect Vision. Or maybe it was just Wanda in and of herself in that complete break. Maybe she just loses control of her powers or tries to do something that causes her powers to get out of control. Maybe she had to give a piece of herself. Maybe that has something to do with why her brain seems a little wonky and some of her memory almost seems hazy. Like she doesn't understand sometimes why she's in a television show or not. Maybe that has something to do with it. We said that in the spoiler review, how like in the comics, a lot of times when you're recreating things, when you created Vision, you gave the brainwaves of Wonder Man. Scarlet Witch, when she had her children, had actually taken pieces of Mephisto's soul without realizing it to create them. And then, of course, when like she's not around, they disappear because they're not real, and eventually that's revealed to her. That's how we all get to, Avengers Disassembled and House of M. So maybe it's a piece of herself. Maybe it's some of the good in Wanda, right? Like in episode 1, like as we get through all these theories, I don't want to forget about the early episodes and that dinner sequence where she didn't do anything, and like Vision is like, tell me to do something. What do you want me to do here? And then she's finally like, oh, save him. Something about that disconnect with her where it's like, I feel like, I don't know, there's just as much as Vision is missing his past, it feels like Wanda is out of touch a little bit with what's going on until we get into the later episodes, when very clearly she definitely understands at least most of what she's doing sometimes. So that'll be interesting. I think that it's possible that Wanda brought him back on her own. But if she didn't, who did she tag? Did she tag Agatha? Did she somehow make contact with Mephisto to bring back Vision? Is Ralph or whoever is, behind the scenes, they responsible? Probably one of those two things. The other thing, though, is Vision really dead, right? Like, does Vision have a soul? He didn't have the soul stone. He had the mind stone. That's what brought him to life. So maybe instead of using, she doesn't have a stone too, but she's also from that stone, like the mind stone. And I'm telling you, the mind stone is going to have a key role late in this, whether it's what leads to the multiverse directly, whether it is something, that explosion when she bursts it, maybe that had some kind of impact in juicing up her powers more. Mind Stone's gonna play into it. We see it in the trailer explode in front of her face, which is kind of reminiscent of what she did to Vision. Maybe that plays in somewhere. I'm not really sure. But if Vision, doesn't have a soul, he's a robot, and maybe to get him to function at least to where he knows who he is as far as he's the Vision, he can float and do all these things, maybe Wanda had to give him a little bit of that to get him going. But now that he's up and running, even if it's not the Mind Stone powering him and it's Mind Stone powers powering him, or something different, but since he's a robot, maybe as he's on longer and longer, things to my understanding, technology seems all-encompassing, and in the hardwiring, all that information exists. Vision's memory is in there somewhere. Maybe being up as long as he's been up, the machine is starting to turn back on, and it's what's making him question everything. It's why he's going to figure out that, like, by the end of episode 4, like, Wanda is doing this, and that he has control and some powers of his own. And I think the fact that he is a machine, you could unlock his memories even more so as we dig into all of this. So I'll be very interested to see where we go with the Vision story. Now, how we get to the Vision being up very well could be tied into Agnes's story, who's another person who's just circling around old Wanda. And it's very possible, and it certainly feels very likely, that Agnes is Agatha Harkness. There have just been so many hints and clues that she is Agatha Harkness. It's hard to think anything other than that. And when you just look at what Agnes is doing, say it's not Agatha Harkness, what's Agnes most interested in, besides just always seem to show up to help out Wanda whenever she needs some help with something? She's really, really interested in those kids, right? Like, those early episodes, she is one of the people who's like, how come you don't have kids? Like, kids, and is contributing to the town, just kind of pushing, like, children, for the children, even though the town doesn't appear to have any children. But why? Why is she so invested in the children? Why does she break character in episode 5 and just go, do you want to take that from the top? Because you want me to hold the kids, right? And what does she do when she finally does get to interact with the kids? She sprays that mist. What if Agatha is the person that helped Wanda and maybe, to Wanda's knowledge, helped her set this up? That's why she interacts with her that way. Maybe Agatha is reporting to whoever the big bad is. And the big bad, like I've said from day one, whether it's Mephisto, whether it's somebody we don't know, whether it's, Baron von Strucker out of left field coming back in, no matter who it is, I think what their ultimate goal is to get children from Wanda. And Agatha seems to be the liaison between those two things, right? Like, she clearly has some kind of trust with Wanda where she can just break character and be like, do we want to run that back? But obviously, she is also scared of whatever's going on. So either Wanda is doing all of it and has terrified Agnes so much that, like, she is scared about what's going on in here. Or Agnes could be Agatha, who maybe enlists someone like Mephisto or a bigger entity, or is involved with that bigger entity, and that goal is to get those kids and to age them up, because after she sprays that, lavender, they age up to 5. Then, they find the dog. We don't see how they find the dog. Maybe Agnes introduced the dog to them. Regardless, she cemented the fact that the dog was going to stay by bringing the doghouse. And then what happens? They age up to 10. And then when they find the dog dead, who's got the dead dog? Oh, Agnes has the dead dog. And what was about to happen? They were about to probably age up to, like, 15, another 5-year jump or something like that. It seems every time they age, Agnes is around. And if she started all of it with that lavender spray, and maybe some of the emotional trauma, or just like the emotional positives, or things that, it just seems like she's always there when they're aging up. Why would she be interested in aging up these kids? Because these kids are magical. We know that Billy will go on to be Wiccan and have powers very similar to his mother, and Tommy will grow up to be a speedster, very similar to his uncle, Pietro. And knowing that, maybe the big bad is like, she's too powerful to try to control. But if I get her kids, and they're half as powerful as she is, and they work for me, then I got something on my hands. And maybe that's what brings in someone like Mephisto. But the other thing with Agnes, and I feel like nobody is talking about Herb. I get it. Herb has a New Jersey license. Agnes does not. So Herb must be one of the townspeople. But why is Herb and Agnes chit-chatting? And why, when Vision comes out in episode 4, and they're chit-chatting, and he overhears a little bit, and he kind of pushes on them, they both get really nervous. And, like, Herb is a about to say it several times, and Agnes, that's like where I said she looks scared. She gives him that, like, do not tell him what's going on. Clearly, Herb, I think, knows more than anybody else in town, except maybe Dottie. I feel like Dottie's going to come back into play at some point. She's not even on Jimmy Woo's board. But why would Herb, if he's just a resident of Westview, have any connection to Agnes and talk to Agnes outside of the show's structure? Maybe it's because Herb is Ebony. Ebony is Agatha Harkness's familiar, her cat, who she can communicate to. It's kind of like a buddy, and since Agatha Harkness has got magical powers, maybe they killed Herb, or they made Herb disappear, or hid him away somewhere, locked him up, and turned the cat into Herb. That's a stretch, it's a long shot, but there is something else. Like, Herb knows more than anybody else in town besides Agnes. It seems to be the only person that can kind of come out of it on their own. You know, like, he's kind of losing it a bit when Vision comes in, and then, you know, kind of fixes himself. Like, oh yeah, look, I did kind of mess up or whatever. Maybe there's something weird going on there where Agnes, if she's Agatha, maybe he's used some kind of magic where Herb is involved. But if he's not Ebony, he has some sort of role to play. He's important. And it almost seems like there are two people kind of watching out for Vision and Scarlet Witch to a degree, you know, which of course is not her name yet. As Hayward asked Wu, and was like, no, she doesn't have a funny nickname, which means that Scarlet Witch nickname is coming eventually. Maybe that'll be a headline in Spider-Man 3, cooked up by J. Jonah Jameson. Ooh, because I think she's got to be the bad guy in Doctor Strange. You watched, or tied into whatever's going on there. But anyway, I think Agnes could be Agatha. I think Agnes is trying to get these kids to grow up for whoever the bad guy is, and I think Herb is connected to Agnes. So now we've knocked off Agnes, we've knocked off Hayward, we've knocked off the Vision, and of course Wanda in the middle of all this. Who else is swirling around Wanda right now? How about the kids? We talked about the kids. What's really interesting about them is they can't be controlled, and that's only happened one other time in the show, and that is the stork. She can't make the stork disappear, he just stays. Which is why I feel like someone else with magic is working in here somewhere. And like, you know, Wanda says to Vision at the end of episode 4, you honestly think I'm doing all of this? You think I can control all of these people on my own? You think this is all me? Like when they go to the dentist or when they got to mow the lawn, this is all me. And granted, when she goes out at that the force field and stands off against Hayward, there are definitely vibes in there where you're like, yeah, she's in full control and she just wants this world so she can have Vision. It's the only place that she can have Vision. Yet when she's inside of there, I'm like, maybe it's not her, because she didn't send Pietro. She didn't call for him. It certainly doesn't feel like she did. So if there is bigger things at play in the magical realm, that's where someone like Agatha or even someone like Mephisto could come in, because Mephisto has time powers and mind powers and illusion powers, all things that are happening. Illusions, you know, Vision is an illusion. A lot of the things going on with the sets and wardrobes are real, as we've learned with Monica, but they are technically kind of like illusions. She's messing with people's brains and memories. You know, people outside of Westview who are just connected to people inside of Westview have no memory of those people. If Wanda isn't doing all of that, it would certainly seem like it would line up with Mephisto from a power set to be helping that. But why would Mephisto be involved? Like I said, maybe Wanda went to Agatha. Agatha knows Mephisto. Maybe Mephisto went to Agatha and was like, I'm sensing something in this. And that's the other thing. I think Mephisto could also be someone who transverses through the entire multiverse. He's a demonic entity. He could probably bounce around. We'll get to Mephisto, though. We got to talk about him in a minute. But if he is involved in any way, and if he wants those kids, maybe some of what creates those kids is not just fully Wanda on her own. Maybe she has to invite the idea in for it to happen, but maybe the other big bad's mystical powers are involved in there, and that's why she can't control the kids, or something like the stork, something that maybe the big bad popped in there randomly. Or maybe it was the kids doing. Maybe it was Billy, right? Like maybe inside the womb, Billy made the stork come to life, and somebody who isn't Wanda doing something inside of this hex doesn't allow her to control it. So I don't think the kids are all hers. However they were made or created has to have some outside influence because she has no control over it, which would be very, very similar to storylines and plot lines that come right out of the comics, as we've mentioned, where the kids came from a piece of Mephisto's soul. That's going on with the kids. I think that's what the big bad's after, and I think that's why Wanda can't control them. Which leaves us just two people left swirling around. That's not Jimmy Woo and Darcy. We got Monica Rambeau, and she's going to have an interesting role to play, because in that scene outside of the Hex, she pleads with Wanda. She's like, I'm an ally. Like, you let me deliver your children. You invited me into your home, and you're in control of all this, so you knew I was a sword agent. Why'd you do that unless you didn't, unless you trusted me in some way? And that's the other thing, too, that's going on with Wanda. It certainly feels like there are two versions of her, right? There is, like, one who just doesn't give a F, kind of feels like a bad guy that's controlling all this stuff. And then there's a Wanda that seems like she maybe is trapped to a degree, maybe looking for help or a way to get out of this. Maybe she knows more than we think she knows, right? Maybe she knows it's Mephisto involved, or that Agatha is involved, or somebody else is involved. No matter how that plays, Monica is going to be central to however we resolve what's going on with Westview. And the other thing that's interesting with her is when she had that scan, it came up blank, man. It was just white light. And that could be a hint at the fact that Monica either already has her powers or has just received her powers. I mean, you hear Hayward say, like, Wanda threw you halfway across New Jersey. You don't think she's a threat to you or to everybody or to the people inside Westview? Why didn't she get hurt? Why is she fine? Maybe it's because Wanda was protecting her, and in doing so, maybe that cosmic energy that radiates from the anomaly and whatever Wanda's doing as she rewrites reality, maybe that did something to Monica and could lead her to play her comic book character who has powers, Spectrum, or possibly even, maybe she takes on the abilities that become Photon, which is what Maria Rambeau is, and it says Photon on her name as you're walking into the sword building. But either way, she is someone who will get powers. Maybe all of this cosmic radiation that we've been talking about that dates all the way back to the Big Bang, which, if you remember Wong's conversation in Doctor Strange, or not Doctor Strange, in Infinity War, when he's explaining stuff to everybody. I guess it's Doctor Strange, yeah, and then maybe Infinity War too. But, when he's explaining things, like, those stones were there when the Big Bang happened, right? And they're all tied to that. And since they've all come into play, we've had massive moments, from Thanos snapping once to Hulk snapping to Tony snapping, and Thanos snapped a second time when he destroyed the stones up on that planet. So you've had 4 of these massive cosmic shocks throughout the whole world, and knowing that maybe that the stone is directly tied to Wanda, maybe when she does stuff, some of that cosmic radiation is creating powers for people. Maybe everybody inside of Westview is going to change, and maybe that's the beginning of the X gene, of the beginning of mutants. Maybe that's how it starts. We kind of said, like, in the comics, she says no more mutants, but being that the MCU doesn't have mutants, you figure she's either going to be like, no more Avengers, or she's going to create mutants. That would be really interesting, and maybe that ties into what's going on with Monica and the fact that, like, her scans are blank, and if they need more blood drawn, because maybe she's got powers that she does or doesn't know about. The way she says, no, I'm done. You think she just wants to get back to work, but maybe she knows that she has those powers. Maybe that was something beforehand, and maybe it's not tied to Wanda, or maybe it is. Anyway, that's really all we got. I mean, she's going to tie into the end of this, obviously, and she's our good guy. She's going to be the person that maybe Wanda trusts, to maybe save Westview before she goes nuclear and leads to whatever is going to happen in Spider-Man 3 and the Doctor Strange movie. Which leaves just one person that's now circling around Wanda that we haven't spent any time with, and that's Pietro. And what does it mean that Evan Peters' version of Quicksilver has landed here in WandaVision? Well, there's several things that could be going on. My initial gut instinct is that that's not Pietro. Or it is Pietro and he's under somebody else's control. Because how would he just randomly plop into the anomaly? How would he randomly show up at the most critical moment for Wanda, right? Like right when Vision's about to make a breakthrough. Feels like there are outside forces around that. So, let's lay out some options. Option 1. Pietro is actually our big bad, whether it be Mephisto or somebody else that we haven't theorized about yet. Or it could be a henchman to Mephisto. Maybe it's Nightmare. We've heard rumors that Nightmare is supposed to be tied to the Doctor Strange 2 storyline. So if Nightmare's coming in there, and he could certainly fit into that, maybe he's working for Mephisto, and maybe he's Evan Peters. And they decide, let's show up in a form that'll be familiar and make sense inside of this world of her brother, where like she sees it, she'll know, right? And that look on Wanda's face is kind of like shock, like, wait a minute, Pietro, not Quicksilver. They never mentioned Quicksilver in the MCU. Wanda and Pietro are just Wanda and Pietro. But like she sees that it's Pietro, but clearly it isn't, Aaron, like her actual brother. So it's one of these things where like her surprise is like, I'm going to play along because I got to figure out what's going on. Or maybe it's, I can't believe you just showed up. I'm going to play along because I know who you really are. Maybe that's, a person that she interacted with that has control over this. Maybe him showing up is, oh, I know you. I'm terrified. I'm not going to say anything so Vision doesn't figure out anything. Maybe that could be what's going on. And it does feel likely that it could be a disguise. But also that kind of feels like it would rob the fans, right? Because the immediate thought when you see Evan Peters on that screen is, oh my God, we're crossing over the Fox X-Men. And just from his demeanor, granted, everybody inside of the anomaly has a different demeanor than they normally do. But based on the timing and just the way he's acting, one, it doesn't sound or look or feel like the Pietro from the X-Men movies. He is acting different. He's acting more like cool Uncle Jesse. Even though I did that with a Fonzie accent. But like, he seems to be like acting like that. And, the whole idea that you're playing with all these sitcom things, the idea of recasting, you hear Darcy say it. It could just be a meta joke that like we cast Evan Peters to look like Quicksilver because like, ha. But like I said, it feels like you'd be robbing the fans a little bit. So maybe it is Pietro. Maybe this is the beginning of the multiverse. And if it is Pietro, what does that mean? Why is he here? Like I said, the thing that makes no sense is why he would just randomly show up at that exact moment unless somebody else wanted him to. Maybe the big bad, let's say for theory's sake, Mephisto, as we were saying, is somebody who can traverse the entire multiverse, is aware of all things. Is an entity that's greater than just one universe. And maybe when all this stuff was going on, and, maybe he's sitting back watching all this, and he's going, oh, shit, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. I'm about to lose it. How can I change this? Oh, I know. There is a universe where her brother exists, and she don't. I'm going to grab him, and I'm going to throw him in here to just kind of mess with her. I don't know. Because she, like I said, she doesn't seem all there all the time. Maybe the idea is pluck him out of that universe because it's available, throw him in. The other ironic thing too, and this is not me, I saw this online, is that 80s Quicksilver shows up in the 80s episode. No, wait. So, yeah. In the 80s episode. And the X-Men movies match up with the decades of WandaVision so far, with the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. The prequel X-Men movies take place in that time. So maybe that's where Quicksilver comes from. Or maybe, just maybe, the big bad is not Mephisto, or Agatha, or Nightmare, or any combination of those three. Maybe the big bad is that big cameo that we've heard Olsen and Bettany mention. Maybe the big bad was hinted at in this episode. One of the things I didn't really call out, other than how awesome it looked with those green lasers, was that gun sequence. When Wanda comes out, she got all them lasers on her, and she's just doing whatever. And it's like, all right, now it's time for me to leave. I'm going to turn all those guns on the guy who took Vision from me. Very, very, very Magneto-like. Like, first X-Men. Got all them guns, and he spins them on the cops. Nothing Marvel does is not on purpose. Put a scene in there like that to give you Magneto vibes. In the episode itself, there's a bunch of X-Men vibes. Maybe, stay with me on this, maybe the big bad is Magneto. Maybe off screen somewhere something happened to his real daughter, to Fox's Pietro, Quicksilver's sister, Scarlet Witch. Maybe Magneto wants his daughter back. Maybe Magneto is pulling a Kingpin from Spider-Verse. Or Kingpin's like, there's a multiverse. I've discovered there's a multiverse. I'm going to find my wife and kid, and I'm going to bring them from another universe to this one. Maybe Magneto's been looking for Wanda. Maybe Magneto found her. Found her at a moment. Things are kind of crazy. Maybe he got involved with Agatha Harkness or Mephisto. They could still be in play just because of the sheer amount of magic that is going on in the show. And maybe, just maybe, he's been looking for his daughter and he's found her. And now he's got to figure out how to get her to come over. Or, like I said, maybe he figured out that, like, she's got these crazy magical powers and get me a couple of them kids. And maybe, just maybe, Kevin Feige is so freaking smart that to tie everything in together, with all these Fox properties, and now you get all your characters back in play, and the fact that there are multiple universes, and we know that Deadpool is going to cross over regardless from that Fox universe, because they're working on a third movie. Maybe he's so genius that he is setting up WandaVision to identically mirror the House of M, from the standpoint that while Wanda is in control, it's not her doing. In House of M, it's Quicksilver's idea, along with Magneto's, to give everybody exactly what they want, so that Magneto can kind of be ruler of all, and mostly to give, more world to mutants over humans. Maybe, just maybe, Quicksilver and Magneto are the ones who are kind of behind the strings, behind the scenes pulling the strings. And maybe, just maybe, that big old cameo is going to be Michael Fassbender, which would make more sense, or Ian McKellen, which would make probably a little less sense going with that theory. Maybe, just maybe, that's what's going on. I have been thinking about this show nonstop since it started. And every episode just makes me think more and more and more. And the more and more I think, the crazier and crazier the ideas get. So that's where I'm at, man. It could be Mephisto. Pietro could be Nightmare or Mephisto. Agatha could be involved. Maybe Magneto is involved. I don't know. But those are the things that I've been thinking about. And I wanted it out in the world before episode 6 drops, because all the feelings and all the vibes we're getting is that this is going to be a massive episode. That leaked footage that came out that involved, Evan Peters' Pietro is supposed to be from this episode. This episode is supposed to be the Halloween episode, which features 2 classic costumes. It feels like this is going to be a big one, so I wanted to get all my thoughts and ideas and theories out there, because God forbid one of them hits, I want to be like, I said it before it happened. And I wanted video documentation. So there you go, man. Those are all my thoughts at this point. I was trying to stay under 30, and we blew right over that real fast. I talk a lot, but there's a lot going on, man. There's so much at play with this freaking show, and I am obsessed. I cannot wait. Just a mere 4 hours away before the new episode drops for me. 3 o'clock in the East Coast. I'm sure by the time this posts, it'll be even closer to that time. But yeah, I wanted them out there before the episode hit. Now they're there. I've purged myself. I feel good. Question is, what are you thinking? How crazy am I? How many of my thoughts or theories are lining up with yours? Would you tweak any of my thoughts or theories? Which one do you think is speaking to you the most? And what's your own theory? Anything you're thinking about WandaVision that you want to get out into the world before episode 6 hits, down below in the comments section. I know I'm not giving you a ton of time, but hey, it's there. So if you want to hit that comment section, man, let me know what you're thinking, what you're hoping for. You know, obviously, I think as a fan base, I think we're all hoping that that is the Fox Pietro, because it would be a shame to lose some of the talent that comes out of that Fox world of mutants. Specifically with the young guys who haven't had a chance to really do any of the movies, like have real play in any of the movies. Could be fun to be able to maybe play with some of them if you want to. So I hope that's what we're leading to with the multiverse. But like I said, put your comments down below. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, especially if you think I'm onto something, man. Give me all the thumbs up. You don't even give me one, then just give me one. And then, of course, as always, you know, if you haven't yet and you want to be here for all the WandaVision talk, or just talk about movies and TV and trailers, and you haven't, you want to show a little love, support, you like what I'm doing over here at the sit down, jump over there, man. Come join C Maniac Nation by hitting the subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, which will be a few mere hours from now when WandaVision Episode 6 drops. I won't talk to you till then, but until then, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, as I live and breathe, you still here? Check out a video like this one, or this one, and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the cinema sit down.